Hi, I'm Kian Moses, and today we'll be analyzing Angels in America by Tony Kushner. Now, when we look at the playwright's intentions, his intentions were to reflect on the social, political, and existential crisis of the 1980s, focusing on the AIDS pandemic and the Reagan administration's response. So the way he explores this is through the characters' different views with the multi-layered story. So we can see that Roy is in a big favor of the Reagan administration, and Belize hates it. Now the intention is to provoke empathy from marginalized group, and to create awareness for their struggle, such as Pryor and Louise's individual stories, as well as to reflect on identity issues, such as Joe, Louise, and Roy's struggles with their own identity. Another one of the playwright's intentions is that of the magic realism of Angels asks questions about society. And we see this through the hallucinations, the theme of religion, as well as the angel. So all of these are just on us, upon us. The characters. Pryor is diagnosed with and accepts that he has AIDS. He gets abandoned by his partner, and he experiences prejudice because of it, because of his condition. Louise is his partner and abandons him, and he is very guilty for abandoning. He doesn't embrace his homosexuality, as we see Pryor say he acts buff around his family. And he also cheats on Pryor after abandoning him because he cannot accept the reality of his partner having AIDS. Joe struggles with his sexuality. He can't accept it because it's a conflict between his religion and his feelings and his identity. And he also feels that he has a responsibility to Harper to look after her, because without him, he feels as though she would be worse off, when in actuality, by staying with her, he's only putting her through more turmoil. Harper struggles with the relationship and relies on pills, and we see her struggle a lot with hallucinations and her drug addiction, and her personifications of thoughts, as well as her interconnection between her drug-induced hallucinations and Pryor's dreams. Then finally, Roy, he struggles with his own homosexuality. He has his homophobic views, and therefore he comes with excuses for his urges. He's very politically powerful, and he denies his AIDS. So now the staging of the play. There's no blackouts, and it's all very fluid movements. This faster pace almost mimics the reality of life and the interconnectedness of the different storylines and plots. There's overlapping scenes which are very chaotic, and they make us aware of conflicting lives and similarities. Yeah, as well as the interconnected dreams does a similar thing. The aerial rigging of the angel makes us aware of the magic realism and epic theatre. And there's multiple characters playing multiple roles, and this draws attention to their specific many narratives and their overlapping connections and what they have in common, and it emphasizes those similarities. So in the final scene, the epilogue, they break the fourth wall, and they just use a lot of alienation techniques. During Harper's hallucinations, she tends to leave the set to wander off to just show how, like, her mind is unbound and free, so is she. Then the socio context is the homosexuality and gay rights movements. One of the aspects of the homosexuality gay rights movements. So some people view it as immoral. Joe suppresses it because he feels as though it's against his religion. Some people see it as being lesser, like Roy says that they are lesser, and that and he denies his AIDS so that he is not gay, so therefore he's not lesser. That's his logic. It's also a form of self-expression for people. It's slowly being rebellious and more open to self-expression, like Pryor and Belize do drag. Some people are proud, but they're not open. Like Louise is open about it to some of his friends, but not so much with his family. He tries to act straight with them. Harper believes it's other group. She dissociates them. Harper thinks that the Walks and Night are gay, and there she blames a lot of her problems on them. Then we've got the homosexuals associated with AIDS, and Roy's denying AIDS, and that they are, that the homosexuals are connected with AIDS. That was a narrative push at the time, and that Roy believed in. There's a slow acceptance with homosexuality. So the more people that come out, the less experimental it seems. Like with Joe, he finds comfort in his newfound community, whereas previously he felt alone, and that's why he couldn't come to terms with it. One of the political contexts is that of Reaganism. So we know that in Reaganism there was a huge focus on the economy. Like Roy and Joe have their business with the law in Washington. Disregards other factors. So medicine was poor because of, and we see this with the AIDS being very lethal. A conservative ideology. So Louise and Belize have a very substantial conversation about the politics, as well as in that same conversation they delve into racism and homophobia, and we see that Belize feels that he experiences prejudice even from Louise's somewhat racist views. There's a stress on the government on the homosexuality and the AIDS crises at the time. And another thing of Reaganism is that it favored the privileged and the rich. So Roy was profiting, and therefore he was in support of. We see this with his work, ties, and connections with Washington. Another thing about Reaganism is that it's an enemy to the minorities. So, like in that same conversation I mentioned earlier, Louise and Belize show disdain, and they express the struggles that they face. So now I'm just going to go into two of the styles, epic and magic realism and surrealism. So with epic, we see that the play is politically engaged. They talk about AIDS, Reaganism, homophobia, all from different perspectives. By having this multi-layered, by the names are multi-layered and representing. So like Pryor refers to the character, but it's also his prior ancestors. So it's almost foreshadowing. The overlapping scenes are chaotic and they break immersion. The epilogue at the end breaks the fourth wall and it turns on the house lights. There's multiple characters play multiple roles to prevent emotional connection. And Harper leaves the set and walks around while she hallucinates. So those are all alienation techniques that depict its epic style. Magic realism and surrealism. So there's obviously the dreamlike quality with the actual dreams and hallucinations that the characters have. There's a stream of consciousness, so when Harper is hallucinating or dreaming, whatever she thinks, she just says. She's got no filter because it's her thoughts, because it's directly into her brain. Elevate characters, so the supernatural beings like the ghosts and the angels make the characters seem more important. They elevate their status. It also gives context and explains characters, like Pryor's hallucinations explain his history, his characteristics, and they show multiple perspectives. So obviously the multiple ancestors of Pryor's each have a different perspective on his life. And then the hope reflects the socio-political. So the angel represents hope for the homosexual community. And I'm just going to go into some of the themes now. I'll talk about AIDS and homosexuality. So with AIDS, there's people that view it, people that have AIDS as a less than. Roy thinks that they're junkies or they're homosexuals. And he thinks that people with the ailment suffer with AIDS and that they can't live with it. He also believes that they are socially inferior, so he distances himself from this disease. So he forces the doctor to come up with a different diagnosis. Some people view it as evil, so Louise slowly, so Louise watches AIDS slowly kill Prior, and he cannot help Prior, so therefore he runs away out of grief. It's very scary because it forces Louise into delusions, and he runs away, and he has sexual intercourse with random people in the park. It's also a part of his self journey. So Louise discovers himself and grows as a person because of this confrontation with AIDS. It also makes people extremely lonely, like Prior. He finds his AIDS has isolated him and has given him no one to confide in other than himself, because he usually had his boyfriend. It's also a form of self-expression. Prior does drag, and he uses the makeup to cover up his lesions as a form of embracing himself. And it's a test of strength, because Prior surviving on his own shows his strength. Then with homosexuality, some people feel shame, like Joe. He suppresses it because he feels as though it conflicts with his religion. Some people are proud but not open, like Louise, who tries to act straight with his family. Some people feel as though it's mentally inferior, or to be homosexual is to have an inferior mentality, like Roy, who thinks that they are less functioning. Some people are open proud, like Prior. Prior is proud, he's open, and he views it as a part of his identity that he wishes to share with everyone and broadcast to the world. Other people face prejudice. So Harper, she does not accept Joe, and she's in fact disgusted by him. And at the end of the day, it's more than a label. So the angel does not have a label, and it represents the homosexuality community and the hope that it can inspire within them. And that is 6, 7, different aspects on Angels in America with examples and explanations, all done. Thank you.